There we are. Hello, everyone. Hi, Melissa. How are
Hi,
you?
good. How are you?
I'm good. I have my third cup of coffee.
All right.
I'm very excited and very with full of energy. And with you, I'm pretty sure it's gonna be very nice. I mean, we had a chance to talk before, and there was also a very nice chat we had, and I'm expecting to be this space or this live session to be very uh, power, like to help others, in this case HR professionals, to acknowledge what they really are, and what they do really bring to the table at the businesses, and that it's okay to talk about mental health, and it was okay before, it is okay now, and we should stay like that. And I don't know why it was not before on the table, but sooner or later we have it now here. Thank you, Melissa Doman, for being here. I would love to have you to tell the people who might be connecting now, who are connecting now, or will connect later, or will watch it later, who you are. Who is Melissa? What's
Well,
behind that what's behind the psychology, the
so I'm
psychologist?
I'm happy to share, personal and professional. So I'm an organizational psychologist and former clinical mental health therapist. I specialize in mental health at work. Book is right behind me, one of the big things we're talking about today. And honestly, someone decided down the road that talking about this organ is apparently not okay. It's just an organ at the end of the day. And so for me, it's not only about raising awareness about what can happen with this organ, but it's also teaching people how to discuss it and changing their
Mhm.
perceptions and beliefs about if they feel whether or not they can discuss it. And I feel very appreciative that lots of different industries and lots of different companies want to have that conversation and they want to know how to do it well. And so the companies
Mhm.
that tend to partner with me are the ones who want to have the real conversation, not the shiny, happy, rose colored lenses conversation. And
Mhm.
I feel very appreciative of the clients who have done that. So Estee Lauder, Salesforce, Siemens, Janssen, lots of different folks, and small companies and medium sized companies and everything in between. On a personal note, I live for coffee and cheese and salsa dancing and bachata and
Mhm.
travel and dogs and never losing my sense of childlike wonder.
Very good. Me too. I like that last one, the child and wonder. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I have a 3-year-old daughter, and she's like, she doesn't hesitate to do whatever she feels like doing, and she's very
Oh,
curious, and she's very outgoing, and that's very nice. And I learn from
yeah.
her all the time, actually. So thank
Yeah.
you. Um, and as you may know, I will be sharing the links of Melissa's website, and also the link where you can find her book there too, and also her LinkedIn URL, so you can connect with her. And I'm going to start asking you a question, Melissa. What motivated you to write this? I mean, you're saying that you don't want, I mean, you're treating mental health as a normal thing, and not just a nice thing to have, or a nice
Hmm.
thing to talk about.
Yeah.
So can you tell us what is behind, what gave you the power, and what motivated you to do this?
So I honestly wanted to create a very realistic how-to guide for not only the how, but also the why. And so I noticed that there's a lot of data, which is wonderful. There are lots of
Mhm.
stories, which is wonderful. There's lots of progress, which is wonderful. But
Mhm.
I didn't really see that anyone had created a playbook of sorts where it was all in one place. And so I wanted it to be very clear about how we got to where we are now. What are the obstacles that are still there? How do you actually have the conversation? And also, because I wrote the manuscript in lockdown, I also included chapters on the effects of the pandemic on the mental health at work conversation. and continued systemic racism and chronic stress and all of these real time learnings. And
Mm-hmm.
also, there are some trends in the mental health at work space that, while they are very well intended, they're actually pretty destructive. So, in the book as well, there are some trends that I call out that, even though they are well intended, they're counterproductive and they're not helpful. So, I wanted to have a book that encompassed all of that in not only my voice, in lots of people's voices. I did a dozen interviews, I collected 100 sources, and I wanted to have something about the real conversation, not just the trendy conversation. And it was a long, hard process, but I'm really happy I did it and that people feel it's useful.
Yes, actually the name and the word, yes, it is okay, and you can talk about it. It's like, oh my gosh, yes, it's a wake up call, you know. And also your trademark awareness is great, action is better. Totally,
Yes.
totally, totally, totally true.
Yes. Thank you.
And that's the next step. Okay, you are aware about that. You talk about that. You have books about that. You you know you have to do something, but are you going to do it? You need to do it. You need to act. You need to create something for you and for the people, for your leaders, for your employees. And that's, I guess, the hard part of it, right?
Yeah.
How can you address that to a company? What's like your favorite, how you open up this kind of conversations with them regarding this, to take it
Honest,
seriously?
to be very serious, my question to businesses who say, do we really need to talk about this? My response is, you can't afford not to. You can't afford not to. Mental health at work has always been an important conversation,
Mm-hmm.
always. But the pandemic effectively hit the go button and made it a must have non negotiable discussion. Mental health is on the table, it is never going away. It's a matter of when businesses are willing and ready and capable to have those discussions. It's a long journey and it takes steps that you have to take, but you have to be very intentional about how you do it because you have to get it right. If you are doing it as a checkbox exercise,
Mm-hmm.
people will
Mm-hmm.
know instead of if you're doing it from a true point of change. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really a different conversation in every business because there's different people in every business. And I look at it like building a skill set, like any other skill set. And building the awareness is good, but you have to develop the skills to look at it in the accurate way and also how to have these good conversations. You wouldn't say to someone, become fluent in Mandarin overnight. You
It's
wouldn't
a
say that.
process. Yes.
It's a process. So developing this skill set is the same way.
Yes, especially if I mean, as HR professionals, we need to uh, process our own process. You know, to be aware that
Yeah.
we're in the process. We're not, you know, we're there too. I mean, we are part of this big task, right? Or challenge, I would say. What do you think has been holding us back regarding not to talk about it? Do you think it's shame, taboo? I mean, what have you learned from the past while you were writing this and talking to any other colleagues around the world? What was holding us back? What happened?
All of everything you said and more.
Mhm.
So I wrote chapters in the book about the inside of work factors and the outside of work factors that make people hesitant to discuss this. So let's look at outside of work, for example.
Mhm.
Depending on your gender, your religion, the culture you grew up in, the country you grew up in, your ethnic background, your family that raised you, there are lots of different influences that make people
Mhm.
feel like they do or do not have permission to discuss this topic, or even if they have a foundation understanding of what it is, because the term mental health means
Mhm.
something different to each person. And honestly, in different parts of the world, there are some countries that don't even recognize it as a real thing.
Mhm.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
a totally different conversation depending on where you are, if it even exists, and if you're allowed to talk about it, and who you're allowed to talk about it to. There are lots of different beliefs and perceptions that we bring to the table. So if you have a Wellness Wednesday program, if you're not acknowledging the differences that people are bringing to the table, it doesn't matter how many Wellness Wednesdays you have. People may not feel like they can participate because of outside of work factors that you may not know about. Or if we think of inside of work, culture can set the tone, leadership can set the tone, your colleagues can set the tone. If it is a culture that encourages people to be quiet or stoic, that makes a difference. If you hear your colleagues or other people making fun of mental health conditions, that makes a difference. If you hear people use language around mental illness to describe things that have nothing to do with mental illness, that will make people feel unsafe to speak up. There's so many different factors that can impact this. So if you don't look at it, all the training in the world won't matter.
That is that yeah, even if comes, the mastermind of mental health, it won't make it happen. um you're so I mean, when you said like culture, gender, religion, everything, I mean, we need to be aware of where we are, and according to that, see if we can, proceed with this kind of I mean, with this topic, which is basically part of everyone, right? We deal with it no matter what age we have. So now, well, in this case, it's at work, which is even more delicate, because sometimes when you have someone, a leader, a manager, say I have depression or I have this other problem or whatever, they might see it as a weakness, so they feel like I won't say anything because then I might lose my job instead of getting help. So that's challenging, because people are just holding back themselves and not being their true self and express it because of the consequences they might get.
Well, it's really unfortunate because not everybody views the topic the same way. And so that's why it's so important to think about, what do I want to share? Why
Hmm.
do I want to share it? Oh, party in the
I'm here.
background?
No, I know, I'm okay. I was looking for the speaker.
Um, so it's really looking at the fact that not everybody has the same opinions about these topics, and not everybody wants to discuss it. And some people hold beliefs that are really destructive about it. And so it's really about understanding that people don't choose to
Hmm.
struggle with mental health. They don't choose to develop mental health conditions. What they choose is how they deal with it. And that is provided they feel that they can, and that they have
Hmm.
access to resources. Not everybody does. And
Hmm.
so it's really about understanding that talking about and managing your mental health is a healthy adult practice. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you strange. It actually makes you insightful and self aware and empathetic and all of these other things. So, if people are saying, like, oh, what's wrong with you talking about your anxiety? Clearly you can't do this job. The response is, talking about and managing my mental health is a healthy adult practice and doesn't mean I can't do my job.
Right.
That's it. It's not rude. It's not defensive. It's based in logic. It's based in fact. That's the answer. So people, generally speaking, won't know what to do with that. So if they're like, go like this, just enjoy the
Yes.
moment.
Mhm. That is true, and we should not be afraid or ashamed about that. It's like, the thing is that it's invisible, right? You cannot see who is in pain or what's going on with that person, because it's here. But it's more powerful and more painful than a
Yeah.
physical injury.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when people compare, and it's well intended, again, They say, oh, we talk about a broken leg. We should be able to talk about mental illness. They are not the same. That is a linear problem with a linear solution. Mental illness should be compared to chronic physical illness because it has ups and downs and it changes shape and how it impacts your life. So I compare different mental health conditions to type 1 diabetes or Crohn's disease or irritable bowel syndrome or something that is consistent and has different levels.
The
It's not the same as a broken leg.
autoimmune disease.
Yes, it's not the same as a broken leg. That is an episodic thing with an episodic solution. This is an organ, like any other organ in the body. And I keep saying this to people because someone decided that we can't talk about this organ, and that is it's nonsense. It has to stop. I'm trying to help it stop.
Yes, and I remember when I approached to you via LinkedIn, when I saw your book, I just ended up telling you in audios all my life in like 2 minutes. Remember?
I
It was
remember.
like
I loved
very,
it.
and I felt like this is such a gift, and I have your book, and it's and it sounds like Steve, right? Steve Brown. He has his book regarding HR on Rise on Purpose,
I love
and
Steve Brown. I just got connected to him. He's the best.
okay, well, he's very nice, and it seems like we're talking to you. My Chihuahua is on
Oh
fire
my
today.
gosh, have the donkey join the conversation. Donkeys have mental
Yes,
health
let me
too.
see. So yes, it's about I don't know. It's very nice because you're connecting. I mean, the thing is that you're connecting with the author. I mean, it's like you're reading out loud his or her voice, and that's how I see it on your book. It's very very nice.
Ah,
And you're
thank
gonna have the
you.
audible. There's now an audible version of the book.
It should be this week.
Oh, okay, that's nice. That's even
Yeah,
better.
I know. I'm waiting to hear it. I actually got to choose the voiceover artist, which was really fun.
Wow, that should be nice. Okay,
Yeah.
very good. All right. Let me. I have another question. I have quite a few questions here for you. Um. Okay. Well, this is something we can, as we were mentioning, right? We are not because everyone is talking about it. We must talk about it. We need to be aware of where we are, what type of culture we have in our, or the maturity that we have in our company with our leaders and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
in order to bring that up on the table for discussion for a committee or a board of directors, what should be those baby steps that we need to, start uh, doing in order to start doing something, to go to action, as you said.
I always start with why. What's the why? Why do you want to do this? Why do you actually want to do this? Because you have to start with the why and the intended outcomes so you can then build the narrative and the story and the sessions and the initiative. You have to start with why. Is it a checkbox exercise? Is it something that you feel is part of duty of care? Is it something that you see as, yes, absolutely, we should talk about this? I can't believe we weren't before. Is it you're doing it because you feel like you have to? What is the why? And then you go from there. Because once you establish the why and you get the buy-in and you get people on the same page, it takes a lot of voices to make these things successful. So if it's just two people who are championing it, that how can you expect that to last? It has to be lots of people making an effort. It's not just leaders, it's not just boards, it's not just CEOs. Every person needs to do their part. Every person. I know that companies and leaders, they set the tone. That is absolutely true. But good leadership on this topic can come from anywhere, anywhere. And so I think taking the collective approach about making the change instead of only putting it on leaders or only putting it on HR is the more reasonable thing to do. Because if everybody, we all share mental health and many people have mental illness, why does that mean that only certain people in the business are responsible for opening the conversation?
Amen to that. Very
Amen
true.
to that.
Amen to that.
That's right. And that, I wrote about this in the book too, that, you can't be everything to everybody. HR can't be everything to everybody.
We get
I literally
exhausted sometimes.
yeah, so that's not fair to have only HR to do it or only the leaders to do it. It has to be a collective effort. Granted, the sponsorship is very important. Yes. The,
Collective
the
effort. Hmm.
the policy is important. How it's executed is important. Making sure that certain events meet health and safety guidelines is important. But it has to be a collective effort. It can't just be an HR thing or a leader thing. It has to be an everybody thing.
And HR. It's not okay. We're there to support, to deliver, not support, but to start. With baby steps. But it's a more collective task, as you said. Very, very
Hmm.
nice. And
Yeah.
it's I liked your trademark. Once again, it's oh, hold on, let me check
Thank
one
you.
second. I totally, awareness is great. Yes, it is great. It's the first step, but that's not it. That's the beginning
Yes.
of the road. Action is better. That is totally, totally true.
Yes.
That's where the magic happens. And now we have different challenges because what how do you see this centennials generation, the centennial generation, or the millennial, the very young millennials? Because sometimes people older than them, we might think that they don't communicate, they lack of this, of that. We like point out
Hmm.
fingers to them, and they have their own baggage too. I mean, their own, and we had all I mean everyone have we had lived the COVID situation in a different way, and they had suffered too, and sometimes we put so much, I don't know, I mean it's like we don't understand that, and we need to take a time to understand every single generation. I mean, at least try our best to do that. So what do you think are those challenges? Because millennials and centennials are going to be part of the workforce, and they are right now, but they're going to be like the majority part of the
Yeah.
workforce. So how can we communicate, interact, help, and bring those topics on the table with them?
So,
Because the thing is that they leave the company, and we say,
yeah.
okay, they are just so lazy, they just want to leave the company.
Yeah. So it really becomes the crossing the divide of differences. So what I mean by that is the older generations didn't have access to the naming of emotions and mental health and things that we do now. Not only did they not have access to the words, but it just wasn't encouraged to explore what those things were. Each
Mhm,
generation evolved in terms of
mhm,
their understanding of mental health and mental illness and whether or not they felt they could talk about it. So people born in 1950
mhm,
have a totally different experience than people born
mhm,
in 1985. And
mhm,
so there's actually an opportunity for reverse mentoring where the younger
mhm,
generations can teach the older generations what they never had access to because you don't know what you don't know. These are the cases where the younger people can teach some of the older people because it's not their fault that they didn't have access to this
mhm.
understanding or the social permission and all these sorts of things. So it's really not their fault that they were
So
raised like
true,
that. It was
Felicia.
just a capture of the time. And so something else, and this is particularly important with the Great Resignation. I was interviewed by the BBC and CNBC about that.
Wow.
And
Tell me, what did
it,
you say? What
thank
happened?
you. It's really quite simple. A lot of people are reflecting on the choices they've made that have brought them to where they are now in their careers and their lives, things like that. For those who are in a position where they can leave their job or look for other jobs, because not everybody's in that position, everybody has different lives.
Mhm.
If their organization doesn't prioritize mental health, that might factor into their decision whether or not they want to leave. Because, especially with the younger generations, they will just go work for companies that do.
That is true. That is
Yeah.
a hard truth.
Yeah.
And you know what I've been seeing is that I guess we don't get it yet because companies are they're increasing their pay rate, their hourly pay rate, in order get people work for them, but that's not the solution. I mean, they want to have time for their own, for their family, and I just don't think they connect with the really need of the people. And money that does not resolve the problem for grand resignation regarding, I mean, all around the world,
Hmm.
everywhere. I mean, it started obviously in the US and in Canada. The thing is that there are advantages and disadvantages regarding those things. In the US, you have the government that helps you with it somehow, but there's a limit. In
Hmm.
other countries, you just bailas con tu pañuelo, like you are on your own, you know. So that's the thing. I mean, I don't know if raising or increasing the pay rate is the answer. I don't think so. It's acknowledge that people are now more aware about what they want to do with their lives,
Hmm.
especially if they have people. I mean, if they have children, dogs, cats, they have um partners and stuff like that. So it's
Hmm.
and we need to be aware that there are like different type of family, traditional family style, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a different experience for so many different people, and we all bring something different to the table.
Hmm. Yes,
Yeah.
actually, now that they were talking about different families, how about the LGBT plus community? They already had so many things to challenge on the inner side. How from us from now that we're talking and everyone's talking about diversity, how can we help them be their own self?
There are a lot of intersections with DEI and mental health. I've been having
Yes, totally. Yes,
a lot
I
of
read
these
it in your book too. That's
discussions.
one like, oh my gosh, this is like,
Yeah, because I can't even imagine what that must feel like for some individuals who are, if it's their family or their community or their employer, where they feel like they can't be who they are.
mhm.
I can't even imagine what that must
How
feel like
hard. Hmm.
to have to wear not even just the literal mask at work, but
Hmm.
an identity mask that has to be so toxically painful. And the mental health impact of that is significant. There is an entire subset within my field of people that specialize around the mental health
For the
discussion within that community.
oh wow.
They are, I mean, it's such a amazing focus area. And honestly, it's how do I explain this? It's a discussion that everybody has the right to have. Everybody. And everybody brings their own experiences to the table about how their mental health has been impacted or their experiences of mental illness. And when it comes to discussing those things in any community, people should have the right to do it. They should feel safe to do it. They should have the option to do it. They shouldn't feel obligated. But ideally, you want to have an environment that sets them up to say, of course, we want to hear from you. We would want to hear from anyone.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
the intersections between mental health and DEI are just so interesting.
I have friends who actually had to leave the country because they were not understood here, and they went to the
Yeah.
states. In the states, they're still struggling about it. I mean,
Mm,
it's different. Obviously, they're more open minded, but it's
mm,
still, there's a national come out coming out day, right? What it was just a few weeks ago or days ago. National
I'm
coming
not
out
sure of
day?
the date. Yeah.
Yes, and I saw a video from Ellen DeGeneres, like when
Hmm.
she had her program, and she had these testimonials from different people from her team, and they were started talking about how it was their first day when they came out.
Hmm.
They started crying. It's like they have so many feelings still
Oh,
within them that even though they had already done it, it's you're still carrying those with you. And obviously, uh, I think there's a big challenge to take care of those individuals, as you said, in a more
It's
human
every
way.
community. Every community has their own challenges about talking about mental health, whether it's
Yeah.
LGBTQ plus, or if it's the Black community, or
Oh,
the
yes.
Latinx community, the Jewish community, um, you know, eh, ultra religious communities. There's so many different communities that run into their own challenges about having these sorts of discussions, because every community has their own experiences and sets of rules. And how it's just so interesting to see how, different communities are looking at this topic. And I think the diversity of those experiences is something that should be discussed and celebrated, not put away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Discussed and celebrated. Yes,
Yeah.
totally.
And I'd love
I
to hear
remember.
from the diversity from the folks who are on our session.
Yes,
I'd love
please.
to see some
Yes.
comments and
Who,
questions.
please go ahead. Don't be shy. Usually they're shy, but we have
I
people
don't
coming
bite, guys, I
in. And
promise.
you have any questions, or at least say hi, drop, say something. um, I wanted to to ask you regarding about the roadblocks that
Yeah.
you have in your book. What do you mean with roadblocks?
So roadblocks are basically the obstacles to these potential conversations. So that's what I was talking about with the inside and outside of work factors. Those are the roadblocks.
Okay, and how about those five big factors?
5 big factors.
Do you have
So,
like, was it gender, the big
oh
factors?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, culture, gender, how your family has raised you, religion, um, cultural background. Those are just a few of the outside factors. And then I mentioned a bunch of the ones inside of work as well.
Okay, yes. I guess we need to somehow be aware about all our differences, because that's what's challenging us not to become who we are, because we don't want, maybe we might project an image of a different image to the public in order to be liked, and just to please everyone, but not pleasing ourselves, just by being
Mm,
authentic. And that's what's giving us stress
mm.
and this kind of uh, issues that are that will affect our performance, that will affect our day-to-day basis, right? Regarding mental health at work, regarding performance and productivity, and now that we are not in a same place, well, many people, they do work physically, but in a person in on a site, on an office, but in this case when they're remote, how can we make sure that people they really do what they're supposed to do, and to be open with them and say if you have some problems, because how they call in sick, they cannot call in sick because they're at home. Where do they go if they're sick? It's different because when you were at work, at the office, you just didn't show up, and when you're at home, it's kind of, I don't know. For example, in my case, I have not got any sick days from my team. They were okay, but I don't think they were okay. They were like all stressed, and they wanted to just maybe leave their house.
So I think it's really about helping people understand that just because you're working from home doesn't mean that you can't still take that time. But people tend to take sick days and they blame it on a physical issue
Physical,
instead of an
yes.
emotional issue. So
Hmm.
when it comes to hybrid working or working in a remote environment, it's about reminding your teams that just because you're working from home doesn't mean you can't say if you feel unwell or if you're feeling depressed or you need some time to not do that work. Just because you're working from home doesn't mean all of those other processes go out the door. It just means you're initiating the request from somewhere else.
Interesting. Yeah, sometimes I think people are not aware about the importance of saying I need a sick day, but not physically, but a mental one, because it's
A
like I'm
mental health day.
overwhelmed.
A mental health day.
A mental
Just as
health.
you, if you were having problems with irritable bowel syndrome and you couldn't work in the morning, if you're having
Mhm.
trouble with anxiety and you need a couple of hours to just
Yes,
get it, to a place that feels manageable, that shouldn't be any different.
it shouldn't be, and well, we've been treating it differently.
Work,
Yes.
work, or work.
Well, in my case, for example, I like probably about a month ago, I was mentioning to my team that I want to have them work 4 days a week, not five, which is traditionally, because I believe in what
Nice.
they can accomplish,
Nice.
but I haven't. It hasn't come to that situation yet. But they're free to do it. But I think they're not taking advantage of that yet. So it's also a process for them to say,
Yeah.
I'm going to work maybe less hours in 5 days than four
Hmm.
hours. But it's not about how many hours you spend on a computer, it's about how effective you can be. And sometimes we get distracted and we spend hours.
And also just feeling safe to have these sorts of discussions in the day to day so they feel as their manager that they can speak to you about these sorts of struggles and that that it's okay and you won't see them differently.
Of course, and that's what I do for whenever I have a chance to interact with a new member for my team. I tell them about myself, about my challenges, and about my mental health issues, and I actually ask for help. I said I need some kind of cheer up from you too. Don't
Oh,
expect me to be
good.
there. I need you too
Good.
in order for me to move on.
Great.
And I'm very transparent. I mean, I feel like I'm not in, I'm a human. I have problems like everyone else. Not because I'm your boss, it doesn't mean that I don't have any problems. So I try to
Exactly.
be very,
Leaders are human
very
too.
honest, very honest. And sometimes honesty, I mean, I guess they understand, and hopefully they say that you don't seem like it, right? Oh, you don't look like you've been through that. And also with my community, I who are not connecting or interacting, I feel like I share also my personal emotions and my struggle, and I hope that can help them somehow. Let's say, okay, let's see. Maria Alejandra ended up writing something here. All right, do you want to read, Melissa?
Sure. For so long, we were so afraid to talk about mental health. And for women in a leadership position, the COVID crisis has been really challenging to balance our personal life and professional life. That is very, very true, especially because the pandemic has impacted women at work far more than men. Many women left their jobs so they could go home to take care of their kids. Because of the challenges around childcare and schooling and doing it safely, and it's always been an important discussion, but with the pandemic it has made it literally a crisis. And not only is the pandemic happening, but there's also a mental illness epidemic.
Mhm,
It's happening
mhm,
right now. So the CDC,
mhm,
the Center for Disease Control in the United States, did a study. Keep in
mhm.
mind, this was from June 2019 to June 2020. That's a long time ago in COVID
Yes.
time. So it showed that in the United States alone, and I'm very curious to see this worldwide data, I've been looking into it. In the United States alone, clinical anxiety and depression diagnoses quadrupled. That means times four, four times as many. So the one in four statistic of people having a diagnosed mental health condition, that will change in our lifetime. I think it will become one in three or one in two. So just because people aren't talking about it doesn't mean it's not happening.
Exactly. That just because we're not talking
Yeah.
about it, actually, it's making it worse. I mean, it's instead
That's why
of
I have a job.
helping.
That's why I have a
Yes,
job. I'm changing it. I'm changing it. We're working on it.
Yes, I
And
mean,
I think it would be great if we could talk about, because I know we're getting close to the end of our 45-minute session. I think that we could talk about just the key actions and the key learnings for your community to go forward.
of course, but I want them to interact more, so I will and
Mm.
impact others, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Melissa. Thank you.
And
Please
maybe,
do. But I
yeah,
will
so
also share your link. I already share your LinkedIn URL, but I will share your website.
yes, please. So please connect with me on LinkedIn or my website, melissadoman.com. And I know that Angie will share the link to the book as well. But I'm so happy for the people who signed in. I hope you learned something new. And I am very excited to hopefully hear from you and to see what
Of
you've
course.
learned or what you're trying to accomplish in your business.
Of course. Well, thank you. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you
My pleasure.
from the bottom of my heart that you had given us this part of your morning or afternoon. And for me, it's very valuable. I will keep on reading your book. I want to have it. I like to have things in paper in order to highlight, but it's hard for me to go, to read on the Kindle version. But I'm trying my best to do that too. All right. Well, thank you very much, Melissa. Talk to you soon.
My
Thank you,
pleasure.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye,
Take
everybody.
care. Bye. Bye, Melissa.